Hi, and welcome to Filmmakers Compass Podcast, a show where we talk about movies and more movies. I'm D-Man, joined by CP. CP, how are you doing today?
Dude, it is good to be back.
Yeah, it's taken a little while. We were on like a full-on summer hiatus here, although you and I have actually seen each other. We're going to get to that. But summer's been fun, but not for podcasting, so we need to step up our game. And I'm ready, man. Let's bring this show back with full force. Let's talk movies again. God.
All right. Well, I'm glad. I appreciate that enthusiasm, D-Man, and thank you for now making us hold ourselves accountable to the entire audience by telling them that we're going to be back in full force.
Yes, well, and if you follow us on social media, you will know that despite a hiatus, that hasn't prevented CP from going to the movies practically every day, and then, making tons of content about all those movies he went and saw. So if you were following along, then, CP hasn't truly been on hiatus.
I have gone to see a lot of movies, for better.
May I ask, is there any movie that you missed that you wish you'd seen?
Yeah, I really wanted to see Inside Out 2.
And you haven't. Wow,
No,
I heard it
why
actually.
would I go see Inside Out 2? Come on, D-Man.
Well, first of all, have you seen Inside Out, the first one?
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, I mean, this went on to become the highest grossing animated film, I guess, when not adjusted technically for inflation, but has made the most movie, which is quite impressive. And also, little caveat, apparently The Lion King may also still technically be a higher gross, but like that's technically live action. The one from like 2019.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like it's technically animated, so I don't know how that all shakes out. Although I did see a post from Disney specifically doing a handoff from Frozen 2 to Inside Out, congratulating them on becoming the highest grossing animated feature of all time, which is pretty cool. So congratulations, Pixar, because they have, retaken that crown from Disney themselves.
Yep.
So, well, I'm a little bummed that your enthusiasm for that movie was really low. But here's the thing. I did ask which one you wanted to see that you missed, and it was Inside Out 2. So I don't know. Maybe not that bad. I actually have missed quite a few movies, so I need to do much better on my end to try to catch up. CP, I've been traveling everywhere. I have been to Florida. I have traveled for work. I went to Las Vegas. I went to the river. I went to San Diego, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And I still, I have one camping trip and something else left. So summer's coming to an end, and thus so is all my traveling. And that should bode well for my consistency on being able to deliver not only an episode, but like you said, full force podcast mode. So I'm excited to just, re-engage.
Well, me and our listening audience both appreciate the fact that you are finally making time for us again.
Well, dude, when you're traveling, you're just completely out of sorts. And some of these trips, they're 4 or 5 days at a time. I'm missing the movies that are coming out that week. And, I can't take my podcast studio with me everywhere I go. So, I'm just excited. I want to go to the movies. That's probably the number one thing. And it's hot, man. It's hot out here. Like movie theaters usually, a refuge from this heat. So
I know, dude.
I know. I need to be back. It's either in a body of water or at the movies. That's my summer dream.
All right. Well, let's get into it, man.
All right. Well, on that note, since we have been on a hiatus here, we do have quite a few shout outs. Now, we're not going to go through and do a rundown of every comment or shout out that we've gotten over this time, but I did want to acknowledge a few of them. So first up is Ivor, who said, definitely looks like you are having a good time, referencing your and I's appearance at Comic-Con 2024, baby.
Boom. Was a good time. Great time.
That was a good time. And he goes on to say, Deadpool and Wolverine is the movie that fans needed. And yes, we missed that one, but we will be talking about it eventually, although we're mostly going to bring it up here in the box office breakdown today, because we're going to spend the bulk of this episode talking about our adventures at Comic-Con.
Yay.
So pumped for that. Which to that end, Drucker commented, They're going to be a podcast about Comic-Con. I haven't heard your voices in a while, and it makes me sad. Well, it makes me sad too, Drucker, but I'm glad that you are still excited about us jumping back on, and we are excited to be here. So hopefully my voice is providing just a soothing aura for you. Hopefully your ears feel amazing right now. I also wanted to bring up Art Robles chimed in and said, dude, we loved it, in reference to Deadpool and Wolverine. So awesome. They did a great job with it. Totally saved Marvel. So I wanted to bring up that comment because, CP, that was something that we did address on this show when they dropped the trailer for Deadpool and Wolverine. We asked, will this movie save Marvel? And to that end, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it saved their bottom line. It's actually crazy. In the last 2 months, Disney has totally taken over the box office crown again between Inside Out 2 and Deadpool Wolverine. They're back on top and printing money again, just like the old days.
Disney is back. Ivor jumped in again here because, I mean, we got a couple comments from everybody, but he jumped in again here and he said, would CP go see Ryan Gosling as Hal Jordan in James Gunn's Green Lantern movie? Now, irony, he asked this question of me, not you. He specifically directed it at me. And my answer would be yes. I think other than Disney Star Wars, CP is generally willing to give almost anything a chance. But you did name drop James Gunn, which might have just ruined everything I just said. So CP, can you give a definitive answer here?
Oh, I don't know, man. Ivor, you know my thoughts on James Gunn. But at the same time, you know how much I do love DC. So I guess, coin comes down to a coin flip.
Okay. All right. I mean, we can flip that coin on air and find out if CP is going to go. So that would be cool. Ross Edmonds jumped in on Furiosa and said, didn't see Fury Road, never expected to see Furiosa, not a movie guy. So wrong podcast, man.
It's like, Ross, why are you commenting on this podcast, bro?
Yeah. Wow. He jumped in, came in hot. And then lastly, Drucker again chimed in. CP, this was something that we did want to talk about on this show, and for good reason, because there's a sequel coming up and we probably are going to go see it. But Drucker chimed in on Horizon and he said, it was good, very long. I thought that there were too many plot lines, though. The first hour I could have done without, but I did enjoy it overall. Looking forward to part 2. The end rushing through everything as like a preview or whatever for the next one was an interesting decision. Now, this really is an interesting decision because this was filmed simultaneously, part 1 and part 2. And I'm assuming, right, if you haven't seen part 1, you're probably not going to be that interested in part 2. So to that end, I mean, you got to at least make sure that the people that saw part 1 are pumped for part 2. Mm-hmm. And this isn't like, a guaranteed thing with like, say Lord of the Rings, where it's like, I mean, come on, they're going to print money. Harry Potter, you're like, yeah, even if one of them bombs, people are still going to be excited for the next one. I think of Dune. We talked about Dune part 1. They didn't commit to part 2. That's wild. Mm-hmm. And here, Horizon's got a part 1 and a part 2 guaranteed, but no built-in audience. So just Kevin Costner fans, and people are a little upset with him. So we'll see, CP, if that movie makes it off the ground.
I don't really know what to say to that, Drucker. I mean, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I loved it. I definitely think it's coming out as Horizons Part 2. I really think that the play here is I think we're going to see Costner sell to a streamer. They're gonna repackage the first movie, which is a long movie, as a miniseries. And then that's going to give life to getting part 2 and then eventually 3 and 4 out. That's what I think.
Maybe that's how it should have been in the first place, a miniseries. I think you look back at like the Zack Snyder Justice League, even that, I thought if you were to break it up into like maybe 4 or 5 parts, might have even actually played better. I mean, it's like a 4-hour movie anyway. So he does sort of break it up with titled chapters and everything. Like it might have been better as a mini series. Yeah. And sometimes these big expansive things, I mean, maybe it would work better that way.
Yeah.
Interesting, but I know Costner put a lot on the line. I heard he put up upwards of almost $40 million of his own personal cash into that. So I'm sure he's sweating a couple bullets, hoping that this thing all pans out in the end. So good luck to you. And hopefully part 2 is pretty dope. But CP, that does it for our shout outs. There are a ton more comments that we have, a few DMs and some other messages and stuff, but we'll save those for another time, and we'll dive into some of those conversations. But thank you guys for continuing the conversation in our absence. You know, we always love going back and forth with you, and we did miss a lot, but you know, the comments kept flowing, so we love it.
Well, let's get into our box office breakdown. Now, it's been a while since we've actually talked about box office numbers, so things have substantially changed since a few months ago where, well, we were looking at them all the time. So when we run through the top 5, I'm pretty sure everyone can guess what they are. D-Man, you've probably seen a couple of these yourself, or maybe not because you haven't been at the movies that much. But
Lame.
Number 5 position, Inside Out 2, still hanging on, still printing money for Disney.
Amazing.
Number 4, Despicable Me 4, which I actually heard was not very good, but it is really cleaning up in the box office with close to $315 million for Universal.
God, that's another franchise that just prints money.
Yeah, I don't get it. But hey, Minions are very popular. I'm told.
I know.
New movie for premiering in the this past weekend, and that is M. Night Shyamalan's film Trapped, which made about $15 million last weekend.
Interesting. I saw a trailer for that. I thought it looked interesting.
It looked interesting. I did not see it. I know some folks who did, and they said that they were all pleasantly surprised. So maybe I'll hit it up later this week. But the big ones, the 2 biggest summer blockbusters so far, in the number 2 position, Twisters, which has made close to $200 million so far, nice. Which I actually expected it to make more by this point in the summer because it's been out for about a solid month.
And I thought it was really going to be a summer blockbuster movie. Like it was just going to bring people out like popcorn film, straight summer blockbuster. Just, hey, you want to go to the movies? Let's go see Twisters, you know? And so what was number 1?
Come on. Deadpool and Wolverine, which has made almost $400 million so far. And come on. How many more weeks till it makes $1 billion? That's the real question, right?
Yeah, it's definitely it's probably going to be, if not the biggest movie of the year, definitely the biggest movie of the summer. It was a word of mouth film. I think everybody was asking everybody what they thought of it, if they enjoyed it. And that's the type of, marketing you can't buy, is everybody just talking about it. I think one of the big things that stood out to me, if you've been watching anything on social media, TikTok Reels, YouTube Shorts, the opening credits sequence, which little bit of a spoiler, I suppose, it plays out to NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye.
Yeah.
And they really, I think that song recharted, in the wake of Deadpool and Wolverine. And then everybody's doing the Bye 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 dance on TikTok and all that. And then, people are just enjoying that opening sequence. Yeah. More word of mouth, like more, promotion that you're getting just from everybody for that film, that it's like you couldn't even buy it if you wanted to. Like it just has to take off. There's a virality to it, and it just works. And this movie's getting all of that.
Yeah, right. So when we swap over to the international box office, it's actually very interesting in the sense that it's very similar to the domestic box office, where Despicable Me 4 is in the number 3 position. Deadpool and Wolverine is in the number 2 position, and Inside Out is the number 1 global movie year to date, which still blows my mind. Now,
it is possible, depending on the steam that Deadpool and Wolverine has, that Inside Out 2 could be the biggest movie of the year. I mean, I think that's in the realm of possibility.
Inside Out 2 worldwide has made upwards of $1.5 billion.
Yeah, that might end up number 1.
Is a heck of a payday. And internationally, Deadpool and Wolverine, however, has already made $850 million worldwide. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Still far off. There's a gap there, but I mean, obviously you can tell from their spots that Deadpool and Wolverine here is closing that gap, but internationally, not so much. Not so much. So that's interesting. Might not be able to do it, CP, if international Inside Out 2 is still number 1. That means somewhere Deadpool and Wolverine's they're gonna run out of wind in their sales.
Yeah, disagree. I think
I don't know, man. Inside Out 2, animated films make just boatloads of money.
Well, We'll see. So do Hugh Jackman movies. They make boatloads of money,
Yeah, that's true. Definitely true.
especially when he sings.
Yeah, he is a talented theater actor. He is definitely an incredible mutant. So, all right, CP. Well, if you're ready, let's go ahead and jump into our topic this week.
Lots to talk about.
Yes. So, Comic-Con 2024. You and I were both in attendance, and it was actually an incredible time because to set the stage, we both went last year, but last year there was the writer's strike and the actor's strike. And so, in general, there was sort of an overall aversion to anybody, even whether they were legally obligated to strike or not to strike. They were sort of all on pause. It was kind of like, hey, in support of the people that are striking, we will not be participating. And so, Comic Con 2023 was definitely, a casualty of the strikes, where in general, you didn't get the big names, you didn't get the big Hall H panels and announcements and all this different stuff. There were a couple, but it was a little bit more low key, and the kind of smaller panels probably thrived last year. A lot of people probably explored other areas of Comic-Con that they don't normally go to.
Yep.
But this year, everything is back to normal.
Back in full force.
Right. Marvel returned to Hall H. They're going to be talking about their next phases of the MCU. And in general, it just felt like the whole vibe was a celebratory return to normal. And everybody was having a good time. I know you and I did, but I wanted to ask you, I mean, what do you think made this year better than last year for you?
That's a really good question. I think part of it was it was great seeing Marvel and DC back on the floor. Last year, neither of them had a major presence on the floor themselves. So it was cool seeing that. There were some fantastic announcements coming out of Comic-Con. And the weather at Comic-Con was probably the best that it's been in years. So
yes, the weather
always a nice
was
thing.
incredible, especially compared to LA. Like I was looking, I'm talking to Steph, my wife, and it's like 99 degrees up here in West Covina. And yeah, down in San Diego, right there by the bay, it was like 75, perfect.
Yeah,
can't
complain.
It was even incredible just for like cosplay outside. Like you could actually wear a costume. You're going to be hot, but you're not going to die. I was going to say, for me, one of the things that actually stood out was this year, we ended up having a little bit of a hotel snafu, but we ended up getting a really nice room. And this year I got a bed. Last year, I was sleeping on a pull-out couch, just sort of, grateful to even be down there. And so this year I had a bed, and that was nice.
Well, that's good. We also, the hotel was fantastic. It was right on the trolley line. It was a few minutes from the convention center. Like we really got
CP.
lucky on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I can overstate just how awesome it was that this hotel literally was at a tram stop. Like you walked out of the hotel and right across the street from the entrance was the tram station or the, the drop off place. And I don't know what else to say other than like, thank you, San Diego, for increasing the number of trams that run during Comic-Con weekend. They also increased the hours so that the tram runs all the way up till I believe 1 or 1:30 a.m. And in general, it was very, very easy to get from our hotel to the convention center, or for that matter, anywhere else around San Diego that we were willing to go. And that was an incredible experience. It made me really appreciate public transportation because, here in LA, it's hard to catch a train, because like even if you wanted to, I'd still have to drive my car to the train station, drop my car off, wait for the train, get on the train. And then by the time you've done it all, you're like, I might as well have just driven.
Yeah, right. It's not even worth it.
Yeah, this was awesome. I loved it. And that definitely was a little bit better. We did take the tram last year, but because our hotel wasn't on one of the tram stops, we did what I just described. We had to drive our car, go find parking, and then walk from wherever we could get parking to the tram station. It was a little bit more of a journey every time you wanted to take it. So, because same thing, it's like, you think, oh, you could get an Uber. You're like, well, if you're going to get an Uber, then maybe just Uber the whole way.
Yeah, right.
Like, what do you need to take the tram for? So this was incredible. And I would absolutely consider that hotel again. It was cool.
The big surprise for me was the bus. I had never taken the buses before, but they have buses that take you directly to the convention center. And unlike the trolley where there's a couple stops, the buses take you right there. And I mean, I was like, we got on, it was air conditioned, we had seats, we watched Fast and the Furious. I'm like, what
I
more
know,
do
that
I
was so awesome.
want on my trip down to the convention center? Like, thank you guys. So I thought that
Can
was
we just
cool.
say the original Fast and the Furious, like that movie is so quotable. It's
it's
just an incredible
it's
movie.
fantastic.
Yeah, I love that one. Uh, like you mentioned, CP, one of the things that really stood out to me was just the buzz around all the announcements, the trailer drops. You know, we would go out to the bar afterwards or go do something, and it was cool because everybody's like, "Oh, did you hear this?" And then you'd go you check your social media or YouTube or whatever to see if it dropped, and then you check out the new trailer. I thought that was a lot of fun because we just missed out on that last year. There just wasn't a whole lot for anybody to drop because they didn't know how long the strikes were going to go for. You can't even stick to your release schedules, that whole thing. So I found that to be really fun. Like just, yeah, meeting up for a drink or something out, or we go out to dinner. And remember, we were sitting there eating dinner and you're like, dude, did you see this? And I was like, no, what? And then you said it and I was like, that's not real. And which we'll get to it, but
That is like the worst teaser you could have possibly dropped, D-Man. Everyone's like, what the heck are they talking about right now?
yeah, it was pretty cool. And then, okay, CP, you actually acknowledge this, and this is one of the things that stood out to me as well. This year, having no longer been a Comic-Con virgin, I was actually prepared for Comic-Con. So, dude, I brought snacks and water and the right shoes, even the right underwear to accommodate all the walking. And, this year I knew my way around. The convention center is just insanely massive that I remember last year, literally, whenever we would split up, sometimes I got lost. I was like, I don't really know where I am. I think I do, but I'll just wander till I find something that looks familiar and then try to figure it out from there. Yeah, generally I was like, I don't know anything. But dude, this year I had all my snacks. It was awesome. Never had that, growling tummy, or I didn't have to wait in like super long lines to get like a $20 sandwich. It's pretty great.
That is nice. Nice position to be in.
If you were following us on social media, you probably saw some of our photos. CP, we got to attend the Eisner Awards. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Eisners are?
Well, for those of you who don't know what the Eisners are, which I'm assuming is most people, the Eisners are actually the comic book industry's version of the Oscars. So these are the awards for the best graphic novel, the best adaptation, the best writer. Everyone who works in the comic book field gets their recognition. And it was really fun because we actually had a friend who was a judge on the Eisner committee. We went to the after party and talked to a lot of the winners, and it was a great time. And it was a lot of fun to be at the awards itself.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was a good time. We suited up. We got to go to the after party. I thought, obviously, like you said, being sort of the Academy Awards of comic book industry, it was a lot of fun to hear some of the speeches and stuff because, as far as people's career trajectories and everything, like this was definitely going to be not a high point, but a highlight on that trajectory for a lot of these artists. So it was really cool to see them get their moment. And I'm not going to lie, unlike the Academy Awards, they didn't start playing the music and rush people off the stage, which did rack up the time of the awards ceremony. It went long, but they gave everybody their due, and it was pretty cool.
And there were some awesome presenters. Phil Lamar was the host. Patton Oswalt was there. We got to see Kevin Eastman, Jim Lee, biggest names in comic books, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a great time. And even just, the after party, getting to chill and people kept walking up and, you meet people in line at the bar or whatever. It was cool. I mean, I had a really good time. Now, CP, this doesn't have anything to do with comic books or movies at all, but I did want to say that, something that made this year better than last year was Chicago style deep dish pizza. So
I am glad that was one of the highlights of Comic-Con because it has nothing to do with Comic-Con, D-Man.
I mean, some of my favorite foods are just like Chicago style foods. Deep dish pizza. I love Chicago style hot dogs, and I love like the Italian grinders or whatever that they do with the peppers.
Italian beef sandwiches.
Yes, the Italian beef. It's just incredible. I love all of those things. And anytime I can get any of them, it's just such a treat.
Yeah, and I'll just throw this out there, audience. So there actually is a Comic-Con connection to this. So if you've ever watched the FX show, The Bear, It is about a restaurant in Chicago that serves Italian beef sandwiches. And they actually had a pop up at Comic-Con serving Italian beef sandwiches. So D-Man and I, loving Italian or, Chicago style food, wanted to go, but every day the line was between 2 and 3 hours just to get into that specific
that like FX area.
And then there was at least a minimum of an hour line on top of it to get to the Italian beef sandwiches. So we tried a couple times and it did not work out between our other commitments, the panels we had to go to, and the social events involved with Comic-Con. We couldn't make it happen. So we were talking, and I actually told D-Man that I knew of a really good Chicago-style pizzeria in San Diego, which blew my mind because they are hard to find.
Yeah, it was incredible. And just to get that taste of the deep dish pizza was awesome. I mean, you and I don't think either of us finished the full 2 slices. I mean, deep dish is just so heavy, especially if you eat the crust.
Yeah.
But man, the flavor, like when you take that first bite, I love it. I wish I had one around here, but I don't.
So it was good. And the best part was it was right down the trolley, a couple trolley stops from the convention center. So it wasn't even really that far out of the way.
Yeah. And it was, I don't know. I like those little adventures, You just hop on the tram and you're like, let's just go. Then we go check it out, and it was pretty cool. So they even had Pliny the Elder on tap. And that was a treat too. I was like, oh my gosh, what an IPA. Just incredible. So, and then finally, it was really cool. While we were out at the hotel bar one night, we ran into Reed. That was a lot of fun.
That actually was really crazy.
What an awesome surprise. And you know what's funny is I had actually talked to Christian earlier. It was like making, self-fulfilling. It was like I had talked to him like, hey, what if we run into somebody that we haven't seen, or like somebody from high school or something, would they even recognize us? And then bam, here comes Reed out of nowhere. He's like, Dustin, I saw you and Christian from over there. And we're like, what? Oh my God.
That was crazy. I was so shocked to see. I mean, I haven't seen him in forever. So it was fun to get to see him and catch up briefly. And, just shout out to Reed. It's good reconnecting, man. And definitely looking forward to hanging out next time I'm up in LA.
Yeah, it's always fun when you run into friends. So, all right. Now, on that note, this year, 2024, there were a couple things that maybe, little snag in your tooth. What was maybe not better this year? I'll start. You know what was not better? The bar line at that rooftop party.
Oh my gosh. That was probably one of the low points of Comic-Con for me. So the first official day of Comic-Con is the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. They always host a party for comic book insiders. And we went last year, we went this year. It's actually a great party. They usually put out a really good spread of food. There's some good networking. It's an awesome rooftop bar where we all got to watch the surprise reveal of the Marvel drone show.
Yeah, we saw the drone show from a rooftop in San Diego. It was amazing. The whole party just shifted and turned to one direction, and we had literally a perfect view. It was perfect.
And everybody was losing their minds with the announcement regarding the Fantastic Four, but they still did not fix the bar situation. And when D-Man means it was a disaster, he means you literally would spend 55 minutes in the line to get a drink.
Yeah, and they had disaster. It's a rooftop, so they had bars on each side, but they only have one guy serving. And the problem is, like, there's not like a second person that's ringing up at the same time. So like people are ordering drinks, but they're mixed drinks. So this guy's got to make each individual drink. Then he's got to charge everybody. Then they have to sign for it and tip. So it was like every single person that got up there, you know what happened if you just waited 55 minutes? Well, then I want a bunch of drinks.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to wait in line again.
Yep.
So instead of making one drink, he's making 4 drinks or, 8 drinks because everybody's getting 2. And so it just compiled because it was taking too long, where I feel like if you were able to just really quickly move people through, but they make you sign for, even like checking out, they make you sign the bill because they want you to tip. Like they could just transact it, and then whoever's paying the bartender could just tip them out. but they probably want to get paid, So like then you got to
Yeah.
wait, they got to print a physical thing, then you have to sign it, then they give you yours. You're like, "Oh my God, this is taking forever for a beer."
Such a disaster. It's one of those things that with the cluster that it was last year, I was convinced that they would have had that worked out. And so getting up there and finding that it was still the same problems just made worse by the fact that there were more people at the party this year than last year. I was pretty upset.
Yeah, something else that I thought was better last year and not as good this year was the Dragon Ball Z booth or the Dragon Ball booth. I
Mm.
think we were really amped last year to go, and it worked really well. They had a lot of DBZ statues, a lot of things from that manga series specifically on display. It was pretty exciting because I'd never been there, but they actually had like a really cool lanyard where you would actually track down like
Collect all the
pins.
Dragon Balls.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was like all the Dragon Balls. So it sort of sent you around their booth, which made it really fun because it was like, okay, cool, we're gonna go find these things. And this year, I don't know, it didn't hit the same. Maybe it's because we already did it or something, but it just felt like, meh, it was all right. I thought it was going to be better,
Yeah.
especially given that, with Kira Toriyama passed away. I thought maybe they would be doing something special in his honor. And there really wasn't anything that stood out to me other than maybe just like a acknowledgement on one of the banners.
Yeah, it was weird, especially since the swag they gave out, most of it was identical to the swag that they gave out last year. It just didn't feel, you got there and you really felt disappointed, which was a shame.
Yeah, I was bummed because that was a highlight for me last year. I actually really enjoyed that booth and I found that to be very fun. But this year, yeah, it's kind of a letdown. And then for me personally, this isn't necessarily a negative. I don't know that it's actually any better or worse than the previous year, but it does stand out to me for one thing, and that is cosplay. So at the actual San Diego Comic-Con Convention Center, I found cosplay to be okay. So it ends up that cosplay in general, though, was still on fire. It just, you had to go to the Gaslamp Quarter in downtown San Diego to really see some of the other cosplayers. Now, I did not realize this, but you pointed out something to me that actually makes a lot of sense, which is that a lot of the cosplayers, because the area around, but outside of the convention center is all open and it's literally flooded with all the attendees, going out to a bar, or grabbing lunch, or even
Mhm.
just checking out what's over there. A lot of the cosplayers go hang out over there because they don't have to then pay for admission to the convention center and then hang out outside the convention center. This actually made a lot of sense, but to that end, it felt like at the actual convention, while you did see some good cosplay and a lot of people dressed up, it felt like the areas outside of the convention center, when you actually scan your badge, is really where all the good cosplay was. So, but that's also cool because that
Yep.
means that, like, let's say you're not going to Comic Con, but you want to come get a taste of the whole weekend, you could still hit Gaslamp and see all kinds of cool stuff.
And I know a lot of people who did that. They're like, hey, I went down there. I wanted to be a part of it. I want to see the cosplayers. I wanted to see, San Diego plastered in the Comic-Con promotions, but I didn't actually want to have to pay to go into the convention or I couldn't get tickets. So, two big weaknesses that I saw. First one, I know we talked about how awesome the trolley was. Well, as D-Man can attest, they run the trolley for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday with extended hours, but on Wednesday preview night, they do not. And
Mm.
I was anticipating the trolley's extended hours till 1 a.m. And I actually got stranded downtown on Wednesday night. I went to a Comic-Con event, then I went to dinner. And by the time I went to get on the trolley at 11:30, it had stopped running. So
Ooh, yeah, that's tough.
failure MTS or failure CP, depending on who you want to blame. But I'm going to blame, Metro Transit because, guys, if you're going to do extended Comic-Con hours, do it for all 5 days of Comic-Con, not just the 4 official days.
Yeah,
So,
I got you.
first thing. Second one, and now this one really killed me. And I don't know if you did this because I did this separately after you had left. So if you remember downtown in Gaslamp, there was a big SpongeBob themed building.
Mm-hmm.
It was called the Goofy Goober Cafe. The whole building was plastered and painted like SpongeBob in this incredible bikini bottom wrap. I was really excited. So I actually had some friends who were showing up Sunday, put our name in for a reservation for the end of the day Sunday, knowing that, people told me it was about 4 hours to get in.
Yeah.
So by the time we went over and we got inside, it was just a regular frickin' restaurant.
Oh, they took all the theming down?
No, there was never any theming to begin with inside. And what I mean is they had like people wore like a SpongeBob t-shirt, but there was no decoration to the interior, so much to the point that the menu just had basic everyday cafe items like a hamburger. They didn't even have the decency to call it a Krabby Patty.
Yeah.
And I was super bummed because last year I went to the Sonic Cafe, which was brought back this year, which was incredible. The entire thing is themed
Dude,
Sonic
it
ways.
always has a line too.
The food is all Sonic themed, and even the disposable containers that you get your chili dog and your fries in are like Sonic characters, and it's awesome. And there's a reason why people wait 4 hours to get into the Sonic Cafe. The SpongeBob one sucked. I was so disappointed in Nickelodeon and Paramount.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I always hate when your expectations, they sort of get up to this level where you're like pumped for something and then you go and you're like, what a letdown. Especially if you waited in line, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That always stands out to me is like if I feel like I actually waited, like how different would you feel if you went over, there's no line, you go in and you're like, whatever.
That's how it would have been. You'd be like, whatever.
Yeah. Thought it might be cool. But if you like got reservations or you had to spend time waiting in line and then you get in there, you're like, what did I even wait for?
Yeah. It was
like, I feel like I wasted my time.
So disappointing.
Yeah. The other thing that stood out to me, which I don't remember there being any panels. Now, this might be because of the overall scope of Comic-Con 2023 probably wasn't quite as big. But some of the panels that I wanted to go to, they were actually at the library downtown San Diego, not at the convention center. Now, to get over to the library to make these
that's
panels,
a hike.
Yeah, I had to not run, but you're speed walking, you're sweating through your shirt, and then you get over there and I felt bad for the panels over there because so many people probably just said, screw it, I'm not going to go to this panel because it's too far. And so, some of the panels, they only had 5-10 attendees total.
Yeah, that's a disappointment.
I was like, but they seemed like good panels. So I was like, I think these would have done much better if they had just been placed at the convention center.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? I mean, as big as San Diego Convention Center is, I don't even know if it's big enough for Comic-Con.
No, not at all, man.
Yeah, that was something that also stood out where I was like, man, there were a couple other panels on different days where I thought about maybe I'll go to that one. I didn't make it. CP, something I wanted to bring up before we sort of dive into the announcements is the number one question I got asked about Comic-Con 2024 was I at Marvel's panel, right?
Yeah.
And my answer was always no. And the reasoning for that is the Hall H experience. So I was wondering if you could explain, because we didn't get to go into this last year because Hall H was wide open.
Yeah.
Traditionally, and this year definitely because Marvel had their panel. How can you just describe to everybody how Hall H works and maybe why we didn't make it?
Well, Hall H is first of all massive. I think it seats around 6,000 people, if I'm right off the top of my head. And so the way that translates is you have to line up to get into Hall H. And there's switchback lines right out front of Hall H, and then it goes down and around the convention center, along the harbor, all the way back towards the Shell, sometimes even further back towards past the Hyatt. It can be a really long line. And the problem is when there's a super big panel that everybody's excited about, people will actually line up a day or even 2 days in advance and get a ticket holding their spot in line because they were there so far in advance and waiting. If you're not totally committed to some of the Hall H panels and willing to kill an entire day, it's difficult to get in.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that we talked earlier about us going to the Eisner Awards. And we sort of said, entertain the idea of are we going to wait in any of these lines for Hall H? And we ended up deciding we wanted to go to the award show. And to that end, we sort of forewent going to some of these Hall H panels or, like you said, spending a whole Comic-Con day just waiting in a line so that we could be there when they make these announcements or do a trailer drop or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, yeah, we ended up deciding to spend the night at the awards, go to the after party, and really enjoy ourselves on Friday night rather than, be in that line. And it's one of the things that, yeah, I think what really gets me is when you get into these panels. So let's say you have a ticket to Hall H on Saturday, and that's the day Marvel's doing their panel, and you get in there first thing in the morning. You have to stay there, and you have to like sit through all the other Hall H panels until you get to Marvel's.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I found weird about the whole Hall H experience was that, like all the other panels at Comic-Con, you can just stay in the one that you're at, keep your seat. But in this case with Hall H, because the experiences are so varying, right? You might have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle or an Alien Romulus or,
Mm-hmm.
Rings
Mm-hmm.
of Power. There's a lot of people that are probably very excited for Marvel's announcements, but they're not excited for maybe Rings of Power.
Yeah.
But because you want to go to Marvel's, you got to get there early, and you're going to be there for that one too, which I'm sure it's still exciting because it's one of the bigger panels they're going to do. But I wish Comic-Con had set up the experience where like you'd have multiple lines for the different panels, because I think their reasoning is like, oh, well, if you wait in line for 14 hours, you should be able to go to whatever panels you want. But I think if you were to separate the lines, you'd find that most people don't end up waiting 14 hours to go to the one panel they want.
Mm-hmm.
But to that end, then that means you won't get to go to all of them. You'll have to pick the one you want to go to, for that day. So like if you want to go to Marvel's, then you got to wait in a longer line. But like if they have another one, say Alien Romulus earlier in the day, but that's the one you're excited for, then you could go to that one. But I really thought about it, CP, and I think the reasoning for this is because they want Hall H packed for every single panel.
Yeah, and I mean, and as I'm sure you can imagine, there's some where people just wouldn't pack it in the same way. Now, for me, the last time I did Hall H was a few years ago. It was when they premiered, dropped all the teasers about Rings of Power. They also had DC talking about Black Adam. And for me, I'm like, I love Lord of the Rings. I will be there, but I love DC Comics. There were rumors Henry Cavill was going to be there. There was rumors The Rock was going to be there. So I'm like, I have to go see this DC panel. And my problem was with what the rest of the day was stacked following the DC panel. I barely got in because all these Marvel fans were going in there and setting up shop for their Marvel panel at the end of the day. And I'm like, come on, guys, like, you don't care about this. Like,
yeah,
that was always my issue.
I know. So from a fan experience, and just to clarify for everybody that if you're curious, the San Diego Convention Center is just set up by halls, and then they're just hall A through H, right? And then so it starts at the beginning, and then the last one at the very end is Hall H. And that's like Christian said, the biggest hall that holds, over 5,000, 6,000 people or whatever. And that's usually where whoever's making, the biggest sort of announcements, that's where they'll host that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was one of those things where I could see where it would be really cool to be there. But at the same time, no, we did not get to attend, the Marvel drop. But all right, let's dive into it then, CP. The announcements.
Let's dive into the announcements.
All right. Well, we're just going to start with the biggest one, and that is Marvel.
Oh,
so
my bad. I didn't know that was the biggest one. Okay, sorry.
Marvel is at Hall H, and they're here to make their biggest announcements about all their upcoming properties, Phase 5, Phase 6, the 2 Avengers movies, and, obviously do a couple reveals. And it was pretty exciting. So let's start with the biggest reveal of all, which is that the Fantastic Four are coming, and the next Avengers film is titled Doomsday. And that means that we're getting Dr. Doom. And the largest reveal of all of Comic-Con was that Robert Downey Jr. is returning to the MCU to play Dr. Doom. So what are your thoughts on this? Like, what do you think's going to happen?
Off the top of my head, it reeks of absolute desperation. Bringing
RDJ
back, bringing Robert Downey Jr. back, bringing the Russo brothers back. It seems like Marvel's like, we really have to make sure we deliver a hit. And it looks like they are ready to deliver a hit.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing for me, I think that everybody's asking regarding Robert Downey Jr. returning is how is he returning, but not as Tony Stark? Meaning, like, I mean, will fans really buy that he's a different person, same actor, different person? You know, is there a way that they're going to use the multiverse to do some sort of Tony Stark variant, which I guess has been done in comic and has been referenced before. But to that end, I feel like there was a slight letdown that if that's the case, then the Doctor Doom we're getting is not, you know, sort of Doctor Doom Prime.
Yeah.
Right. It's not the, you know, the comic character that everybody, you know, always loved. But there is also a possibility that, right, Robert Downey Jr. might not look like Robert Downey Jr., a la maybe, you know, the Penguin in the Batman.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
He doesn't really look like Colin Farrell.
And he's a super talented actor. There's nothing that says he's going to play Doctor Doom exactly like he played Tony Stark.
Yeah, right. So I don't know. I kind of thought like there might be a way to do it where if you could just change it enough so that he doesn't look or sound like Tony, you could probably try to pull it off and keep, you know, Doctor Doom Prime. But my guess is we're still sort of in this multiverse saga that, you know, we're looking at probably a variant here. That would be my guess.
I think Marvel made it very clear they are pivoting away from the multiverse. I think part of that was evident in the apology they issued in Deadpool v. Wolverine. I think the other part of that, though, is the decision to pivot away from Kang as a villain and focus on Doctor Doom as the big bad in the upcoming Avengers movie.
On that note, are you disappointed that we won't get sort of a completion of the Kang storyline and the multiverse saga? Or do you think, you know, the state that Marvel was in, people's kind of complaining about how Marvel's quality has dropped, maybe it was time for a pivot?
I'm not disappointed. And I think the reason why is Kang was pretty much a failure from the start. And what I mean by that is this whole phase of Marvel has been really a disappointment for the fans in the sense that Marvel has said many times they're dropping hints, yet the fans were never really convinced of what the hints were. And I think you set Kang up to be a failure as a villain early on when essentially he's bested by Ant-Man.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think Ant-Man was the opportunity to really, you know, in wrestling terms, put Kang over, you know, have him absolutely take out, you know, sort of one of the, you know, Avengers, honorary Avengers. And I mean, not even close. It shouldn't have even, I mean, he should have been absolutely squashed, totally destroyed. And, you know, the state of things should have been in, you know, great flux, right? It should have been.
Yeah.
Exactly. Instead, you know, Ant-Man wins and it gets wrapped up. And then it's like, yeah. And we're like, that's supposed to be the guy that we need the Avengers for?
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing too is, you know, obviously if you're doing a multiversal saga and you have a character like Kang, I mean, what are the unique capabilities of a person that has all those variants across time and he knows all of the things that are going to happen? I mean, the storytelling possibility is incredibly high, but it didn't appear.
It was never delivered that way.
Right. That Marvel was ever, you know, sort of up to delivering stories to that level that would sort of, right, blow your mind where you're like, how is this happening? Instead, you know, you look at the Ant-Man thing. He got into a fist fight with Ant-Man. And I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and if that's where it's going, then I'm like, no, it should be wild. And, you know, they should be doing things that I can't even think of in the moment right now because I want to have my mind blown.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely.
So I have to agree with you. I think the pivot was actually fairly well done. You know, Marvel sort of got like an out because of the, you know, kind of outside the stuff with Jonathan Majors, which we won't dive into all that, but, you know, they sort of got like a get out of jail free card there so that they could just do this pivot. And everybody's kind of like, well, what were they going to do really? Like they kind of had to. You know, you could try and recast Kang, I guess, but to that end, I think they just recognized like on almost all levels, it just wasn't working properly. And sometimes a pivot helps with that. So, well, you know, we're talking about Doctor Doom, but during the drone show, we also saw a hint of Galactus. And during exclusive footage within that panel, there was technically a quick look at what is believed to be Galactus, his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the Fantastic Four, first steps. I think people are pretty excited for that. What were your thoughts on just the Fantastic Four reveals and what they're sort of planning with them? Because they've been a long time coming, and especially after the last Fantastic Four movie, nobody's been stoked for them, I think.
Well, we got to remember we've had 3 Fantastic Four movies. The first 2 were questionable successes at best, and the third one was a miserable failure. I think what really upset people was in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. When we got Galactus, he was a giant puff of smoke.
Yeah.
And I think that was not the character that people wanted to see. So I think fans are excited to see this in the way that the character is portrayed in the comic book, something closer to true form. But I think that's also justification for Marvel to bring back the Russo brothers, to bring back Robert Downey Jr., to make sure that this attempt at the Final Four is the best attempt and that they do it right and that it is not the failure that the previous ones were.
I actually liked the vibe that I was getting from the Fantastic Four. It feels very different than sort of any other iteration we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was very exciting. It almost had this sort of like World's Fair, like real old school, like 50s, 60s, like optimistic scientists doing this stuff. And I liked that vibe. I thought that was really kind of cool. It almost looks a little bit like, like old Walt Disney movies where he's like, talking to the audience and doing things. I was like, kind of like it, almost a little bit like some of the videos that we saw in like Iron Man 2 with like Howard Stark.
Howard Stark. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of had that, like a little bit of that vibe. And I was like, you know what? I'm kind of digging it. Like for a whole movie, that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah. It'll be fun to see what a lot of people have been waiting for the Fantastic Four to reappear, and they are here. I mean, we were on the rooftop with all the comic book writers and industry folks, and they all went nuts when the drone show made the reveal. So we know there's a lot of people excited about this.
Yeah, Galactus would be really cool. I mean, I definitely want to see the guy that was like, do you remember in like Toys R Us, they used to have that like massive action figure of Galactus? Like, I want that guy.
Yeah.
The guy that if I got that action figure, I'd be like, he's gonna like totally wreck my room. When I have these battles with my action figures, like he's gonna absolutely, like he's gonna punch my mattress and I'm gonna have to throw it over. So I think that would be cool. And then finally, we got a little bit of a deeper look at the new Captain America: A Brave New World, and I think the big thing that sort of came out of this was Red Hulk.
Yeah.
So there's a recast here. Harrison Ford is recast as Thunderbolt Ross, and obviously we're finally going to get a Red Hulk. Now, I don't know exactly, they didn't really reveal much in the way of how this will happen, but it is kind of crazy when you think, if I'm not mistaken from the trailer, Thunderbolt Ross is now the president of the United States.
That's what I got, yeah.
So president is Red Hulk? That's a little wild. So I'll kind of be interested to see what they have to say about that. And then finally, it's not stated in the trailer, but apparently during a clip that they revealed during the Comic-Con panel, it was mentioned that they discover adamantium.
Yep.
So obviously, a tease to a different version of Wolverine, but more importantly, it looked like they're actually using the Celestial that was left over from what's the movie? I was going to say Elemental, but it's not.
The Eternals?
Eternals, that's what it is. Yes. So finally, I guess that's coming back into play because that thing's just been sitting in the ocean for, practically years now. And it's never even, I think, been mentioned again, which was kind of weird. So it's pretty cool that they're actually going to, from a story standpoint, reintegrate that. I think that movie looks cool. I heard on the panel that Captain America himself actually said that this movie sort of goes back to a return to form of a more down-to-earth spy thriller type scenario a la Winter Soldier.
Yeah, that's the vibe I was getting.
Which I'm excited for that. I mean, these big, Infinity War, Quantum Mania sort of giant space and time traveling and, you're going into the quantum realm. Like, it is fun, but also like there's like you want sort of like a rounded look at some of these heroes. Like not everybody is always going to be like in the quantum realm.
Yeah.
So or like Doctor Strange, you're like multiverse hopping, or in Spider-Man, it's like all these other people are coming from different dimensions, and you're like, oh my gosh, like we don't have any spies anymore,
Yeah, right.
double agents,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
and does anybody get shot anymore, or are guns completely out? You go back to, like, I think of the Avengers 1 when, like, Loki and his team invade the
The
what is it?
helicarrier.
Yeah, the helicarrier. And they're literally like firing guns. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, we haven't seen guns in the MCU in a while. So I think that would be pretty cool. And then finally, the last major announcement, which they didn't really announce anything so much as just bring out and introduce the cast, but for Thunderbolts.
Mhm.
So to that end, we didn't get a trailer or anything that really stood out to me as like, oh wow, I'm super excited for this where I wasn't before. But I am curious what your feelings towards Thunderbolts are. I mean, is that something that you're interested in?
It was never a Marvel movie that when I saw it on the docket of upcoming films that I was like, oh boy, I'm so excited. But given the light of the shifting direction, the fact that it seems that there's a more cohesive plan going forward than there was a year or two ago, I'm a little more optimistic about the film than I was.
Yeah, I got the impression. So obviously, for anybody that doesn't know Thunderbolts, apparently it's sort of Marvel's answer to Suicide Squad, and I don't know which one comic came
Mhm.
first, but in terms of them following up now, yeah, it's kind of like the villain team, like Suicide Squad for Marvel. And I got the vibe that right now Marvel wasn't selling the film any other way than look at the cast.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to really highlight the characters that are going to be a part of that team and really sort of get people excited for the actors themselves and sort of this chemistry that they said they had on set. And that was like, I even got the vibe at the panel. They're not revealing anything except just bring the cast out, just get
Yeah.
people excited for these characters. And maybe that's the right play. Maybe it's not, because I still don't know anything about what the story will actually be. But I do know, right? If you like the Winter Soldier, or whoever else is on the team, you're like, yeah, all right, I might be in for that. Like that
Mhm.
could be cool. So,
Mhm.
and you probably only gotta latch on to one or two of them, and then if they do it right and the team comes together really well, then you'll just be sold. I don't know. I'd be interested to see what happens with that. But so for Marvel, those were really the biggest announcements, biggest reveals. I think the RDJ one, when he just, I mean, he absolutely crushed that reveal. I mean, the Russos sort of, they build it up. I mean, the Russos coming back was an announcement. It was a reveal. Up to the Comic-Con Hall H panel, nobody knew who was directing the next Avengers
Yep.
movies. And like you said, there maybe is a little desperation, but you could see Marvel sort of being like, "Hey, listen, we're just bringing back the big guns. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
let's start there, bring them back, and hopefully get fan excitement back up." But man, when they're sort of like, there's only one man that can play Victor Von Doom, and he walks out, lifts the mask, and then he's got his arms up just like Tony did
Like
back in
Tony
the
Stark.
day.
Yep.
You're like, oh my god! And then what was his quote? He's like, different masks, same
That's how Dad
task.
did. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Wrong RDJ quote.
I'm not gonna lie though. I mean, here he's supposed to be, Doctor Doom, and he's got the mask on and he's wearing the green. But I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I just see Tony Stark.
Yeah, right.
I mean, because he embodies that character like none other. Which is crazy, dude. Because, like, side note, if I had to guess based on the success of the MCU overall and Marvel's properties, the casting of Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man might go down as one of the most important castings of all
Oh,
time.
absolutely. I mean, absolutely.
Like, I heard Marvel at this point, that all the MCU movies combined, they have a box office total of almost $30 billion.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
and I mean, Iron Man has to work, but not only that, like, I mean, they literally rode Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark all the way to the most successful movie franchise of all time.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's
If that
insane.
doesn't work, if Iron Man doesn't work, I mean, yeah, maybe you still have a connected MCU and all this, but then it just, is it a $30 billion property? Maybe not. Might have
No.
left a lot of billions on the table.
God.
So But Marvel was not the only major announcements. So my personal favorite, this was my favorite thing we got, and that we dedicated some episodes to this CP, Rings of Power Season 2.
Oh boy. Now, oh man, D-man. That trailer, all right, let me start over here. And I think our audience knows this because we spent a lot of time talking about what I felt were shortcomings in the Rings of Power series the first time around. And I am so incredibly pumped about the new trailer.
Dude, that trailer is awesome. Like, literally, I showed Steph, my wife, that trailer. She didn't even watch Rings of Power Season 1, and she's like, that looks amazing. She was like, that's probably one of the better trailers I've ever seen. I was like, right? It's like incredible.
Yep.
And I mean, for all the shortcomings that was Rings of Power Season 1, and to that end, for many people, just apparently ruined Lord of the Rings for them, Season 2 looks incredible. I mean, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that they did learn from some of the lessons of Rings of Power Season 1, and they can sort of move forward. But if this trailer's any indication, and hopefully it is, they did learn those lessons, and we're actually going to move forward with a much faster paced, larger in scope sort of story. And yeah, everything looks good. Dude, there were Balrogs and wizards and Sauron and rings, and oh, it was awesome.
Looks epic. It looks like all the things that we love about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And our friends who were in that panel did report that they got the vibe from the panelists themselves that Amazon was listening to the fans and is very receptive to what they did wrong and seemed to be trying to atone with this upcoming Season 2. So I'm very excited, a few weeks here and it's back.
Yeah, I mean, I was always a fan of Rings of Power. I enjoyed the ride, watching it, sort of week to week, and how all that happened. I mean, it's not without its shortcomings as a season of television. I would never proclaim it to be. I mean, it's not even on the level of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Looks beautiful, but it had its issues. But I still was a fan. I mean, I was already without the trailer. I mean, I'm gonna check out Season 2, so like I'm in. But they really needed that trailer for the people that clocked out. They're like, hey, I'm out. I don't really want Season 2. Well, hopefully this trailer was able to at least, get people back on board to even give it a shot. But I thought they accomplished their goal here. That's the power of what a trailer can do. And like, one of the things I have to give them a tip of the cap for was, I felt like in this trailer, they really laid it all out there. I mean, it's long. It's a long trailer. But I felt like they really laid it out there, and they're like, listen, we're just going for it here now, and we're not going to like hold back on, oh, what's this or that. They're like, nah, are you guys in or out? This is what it is. I'm like, that's dope.
Yep.
So something else that kind of threw me off balance was, did you see that there's a new season of Dexter Resurrection?
Well, so my understanding, and this is what really confused me, apparently Paramount is all in on the Dexter thing, because there's not just Dexter Resurrection, which Michael Hall claims is essentially picking up where he said it picks up almost exactly where Dexter left off, which most people thought was the end of Dexter, right? Dexter's dead and they're moving on. He says it's picking up right there, but then there's also Dexter Original Sin, which is the prequel to Dexter.
I don't know, man. Even when they brought it back, what was it, First Blood?
Yeah.
I was kind of skeptical. I mean, Dexter to me had a really strong 4-season run. 1 through 4 were absolutely incredible seasons of television. And then I felt like it already was going downhill by the time they got to the finale, which was, of course, one of the most controversial and hated finales. And then, so you bring it back, and I think people definitely said the season was better than some of the later seasons of the original run, but still didn't hit the heights of what made Dexter so great in the first place. So obviously here, Dexter Resurrection. So like you said, I mean, I don't even think they're hiding it. They're like, we're just going to bring him back. Like, I don't know, maybe he survived somehow, just like people do in movies and comic books.
Yeah.
I was watching Captain America, the First Avenger, a few days ago, and I watched Bucky fall off that train, and I was like, I don't see any way that he lived, but he did.
No, if you build someone a robotic arm, then they can survive anything. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I was like, I guess he lived. But sometimes, that's how they do these things. I had also heard rumors, though, that they were talking about positioning his son, I think his name was Harrison, as the main protagonist and sort of having Dexter, the actor, actually take over that sort of Visions role that Harry, his, adoptive father, did for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that might be interesting. But then, it is called Dexter. So it's kind of like, what are we doing here if it's not really about this guy? So I was never on board with that either, because I was like, I don't know. I mean, if we want more Dexter, bring Dexter back. So I kind of like this. I kind of just bring the guy back, whatever. We'll all just forget that he died and just make an awesome show with this serial killer.
Well, as you know, I never really watched much Dexter. I think the thing is, and this is the question I always ask every time they bring back a series, is are we retreading familiar ground, or are we taking this character someplace new? And I don't think we know yet what's going on with it, but it feels to me again like the safe bet, in the same way that Paramount Plus keeps, cranking out Star Wars Trek series. I think that now they're going to keep cranking out Dexter series, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think, if you go back to the first season of Dexter, one of the things that really resonated with the character was this sort of exploration of, you have this guy with like a shadow self, right? He's sort of probably like most of us. It's why Dexter was so alluring, is you have this guy that's, sort of putting on a face when he's in public. He's never his true self, right? We all have shadow sides of ourselves that we don't reveal to everybody, And you end up with this guy that basically in the seasons they ask questions like, oh, can I fall in love, but for real? Like, I'm married and I love her because like we have a family together and stuff, but like, can I fall in love, like passionate love? You have like the next season is like, can I have a friend, but like a real friend that knows me, that knows this shadow side of myself? And then, he sees a serial killer, and they kept exploring these sort of dark sides of his character overall. And the later seasons, I feel like there's just another serial killer in Miami. That's how Dexter went. And I feel like that's sort of where it's stuck at, is like they're not exploring the depths of this guy anymore to the, they got to bring it back to that, is what I'm saying.
Fair enough.
Well, while we're talking about Paramount Plus, I also want to throw out there, did you catch the announcement for TMNT, the new animated show?
I did. And of course, I'm going to watch it. Are you going to watch it?
Yeah, they have the original voice cast coming back, which was something you and I had sort of questioned when we were at Comic-Con. We were like, sometimes these shows, when it's not the movie, they might recast the voice actors, but it actually is the voice actors, which is pretty cool. Very exciting. I love the animation style. And to that end, the announcement was that they released the opening title sequence for the show, which was really cool because it's almost drawn against this notebook paper, which I love. That's one of the things that I loved from the Mutant Mayhem, was that it sort of had this almost like it almost looked like if you were drawing and then like passing it to your buddy in class, like, oh, I drew these panels, and like you pass it over. That's how the animation felt. And it looks like they're really going to continue that vibe here. So I was pretty pumped. I think that could be pretty cool too.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited.
Loved Mutant Mayhem. I know I went to this panel without you, but this is something that I wanted to address because it was really the only major thing that came out of Comic-Con that was Star Wars. And that's their new sort of open world RPG game called Star Wars Outlaws, where you're playing as a female protagonist that is essentially trying to get out of debt by doing jobs for like Jabba the Hutt. So not a lot of Jedi Knights. I believe this takes place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. But the big thing that they were really hinting at was it's an open world Star Wars game, single player, not multi-massive RPG or whatever, MMORPG, but just a solo, like explore the world. You could do whatever you want. And I was wondering, is this the video game that fans have always sort of dreamed of, you know, for Star Wars. Because I know I played Star Wars games, particularly when I was younger. Star Wars Galaxies, shout out. I love that game. It was so much fun to explore. But this was something that I thought, I don't have any gaming systems, CP, and I'm probably not going to buy one just to play this game. But I did find myself thinking, like, man, I wish I could, which is probably a good sign.
That's probably a
So,
good sign. Yeah.
yeah, I've heard some of the initial gameplay is pretty rudimentary. It's not a groundbreaking gameplay, but I think the allure of the world is to explore the Star Wars galaxy in an open world environment, of which I think this game is going to truly succeed. And so I'm actually pumped for it, and I would love to play it. Like, I'd love to just go explore Tatooine, like go hang out in, a cantina somewhere, or fly a spaceship, or I don't know. That just all sounds fun to me. So, well, talking about Star Wars, let's hang out in space for a little bit longer. Alien Romulus.
Oh man.
CP, back to form.
I am so pumped about this trailer. And I know they released another one at Comic-Con, and I think now the final trailer has been out and the movie is dropping in theaters very soon. And I am really, really, really excited personally.
Yeah, I think it looks big. I think it looks great. I think it's really taking the Alien franchise sort of back to what made it, so beloved in the first place. Really has a little bit of that horror vibe. They're definitely playing into the styles, I think, of both Alien 1 and Alien 2. It looks like there's going to be simultaneously cool action sequences, but also elements of that horror genre that really embodied Alien. Yeah. And so I'm hoping they can knock this out of the park, because I hope it doesn't just end up like, do you remember that movie Doom?
Yeah.
I think it was with The Rock.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of like, I hope it doesn't end up like that, even though I actually really liked Doom. I thought it based on a video game, and I found that movie to be fun. It sort of had that first person video game style, they were going with. And I thought it worked to the extent that, like, you sort of got what you paid for, but not much more.
Yeah.
The story felt stock right out of the video game, and it didn't feel like they really had anything other than even stock characters and, all of that. I mean, when's the last time you watched Doom?
Probably when I saw it in the theater when I was a teenager.
Exactly. So I'm hoping this movie can definitely take maybe a step up above anything like that, and not just fall into these sort of basic tropes that we've either, like you said, we've seen before, like tread new ground. So I love the idea of going back to form, but I'm also hoping that they have a few surprises in store for us, so that it just doesn't feel been there, done that.
Well, and I think a couple things that work for it is the decision to bring back an experienced horror director. Good move. And Ridley Scott is obviously still involved with the franchise, which he was not always. They went away from him. I know he came back and told the Prometheus ones, but again, I think the problem with that is I don't think we ever really watched the Alien movies needing an origin story. We watched the Alien movies to experience what it's like to try and survive face huggers. And even the same thing when they shifted it to Alien versus Predator, I'm like, this is an over the top action franchise, but the original one lives in this like hard sci-fi elements of horror. And I think it's really cool that they're going back to that.
All right. I hope it's good. I mean, it's definitely one that I have on my list and I'm excited to see. So, maybe even have a little bit of a Alien movie marathon here,
Yes,
that could be fun.
I was thinking the same thing, man.
So, final announcement I wanted to cover here on our podcast, but that is actually the Penguin. So, taking place within the world of the Batman, it obviously appears that they are willing to expand this Matt Reeves Gotham City beyond just the Batman films. And they did drop a new trailer, which, again, looked pretty incredible. I was kind of on board. I mean, I will say this. When it came to the Batman, I think the number one thing that really stood out for me that they just did right was the live action version of Gotham City that I always sort of pictured in my head. Grimy, corrupt, very dark, and just not a place that you'd probably want to go walk around. I feel like Gotham, to me, when I think about it, is like a place where if I went to like a convenience store to go buy a soda and a candy bar, it might get stuck up.
Yeah.
You know, like it's that type of place. You know, you can't just hop on the subway without worrying that somebody, you know, might rob you.
Yeah.
Like this is not a you know, nice place to be all the time. You know, and even though I think Gotham has always, whether it's the Tim Burton version, the comics, the animated series, I mean, they've always had levels to Gotham, right? There's still corporate and there's these high level people at the top. But when you're on the street level, I feel like that's where the Batman succeeded. And that's what I think they're going to try and explore a little bit here in the Penguin. So I'm kind of pumped for it.
I agree. I really like the trailer. I mean, unfortunately, at Comic-Con, the display that Warner Brothers set up did actually end up catching on fire, I think, on Saturday.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. But I really love the trailer that I saw. I like exploring the Penguin in this new direction. It also stays very true because the Matt Reeves, the Batman, was based on The Long Halloween, which is really the story of Batman, you know, Maroni, Falcone, the mobster criminal underworld of Gotham. So I think it's cool that we're now exploring how that world has evolved in the result, you know, in the aftermath of the Batman film. And it looks like it picks up right where the movie ended.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, I feel like it picks up now. There was no hints of Batman himself making appearances here, although obviously I'm assuming he'll be talked about. But there's nothing yet to say that like Robert Pattinson or even, you know, a long shot of Batman on a building or anything, that we're going to get anything of that nature at this time. Do you think this show needs Batman in it to succeed?
No, I don't. And I think what I'm hoping they're going to do is this is going to be the prequel that we need to truly explain how we got from the Batman to the Batman, you know, sequel film.
They have not announced, I think because Penguin's coming out, they haven't really announced too much about the Batman sequel, what it'll be called, who the villain will be. I think who the villain will be is really what everybody's on pins and needles about. You know, rumors online, you know, everybody seems to favor seeing a new version of Mr. Freeze. So, you know, because Arnold.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I actually love Arnold's performance. Like, I feel like he went all in and like we got some great memes and like all kinds of stuff. Like, I don't hate it. But I mean, I think just like, you know, sort of getting a modern day Riddler, you know, and not Jim Carrey's Riddler. It's like, could they do justice to Mr. Freeze for the depth of character that he actually is? That would be cool. So, but I also love the idea of sort of having the Penguin be this underworld boss, you know, the Iceberg Lounge and like that whole thing. And he's sort of always going to be on the edges, you know, and even in his own show, he'll be the star. So like, I think that's really cool because, you know, Batman's rogue gallery of villains is really what, you know, I think people think of when you think of Batman. It's obviously his parents getting killed, but just all these crazy villains that are in Gotham, you know, they're wild. And so, but it's cool because, you know, I think comic book movies sometimes have, you run the risk of being like villain of the week. Yeah. And like with the Penguin and what they're doing here, I think it's cool because it's like building this under this world that, you know, hopefully he'll pop up in the next movie and that'll be cool.
I agree. I'm very excited. So we'll be looking forward to that one.
Well, all right, CP, that actually does it for our episode this week. We ran a little long, but we had a lot to talk about, and it's been a while since we podcast, so cut us a break, I think. You know, we had a lot of things to say, but it's been fun podcasting again, and I'm glad that we're back. So to all of our listeners, thank you guys for tuning in, and we're glad that you're back as well. And we hope you enjoyed this episode, but we will be, you know, releasing podcasts regularly again. The hiatus is over, CP. So
hiatus is over.
Yeah, very exciting. So just like you guys have done during the hiatus, be sure to keep the conversations going. You can follow us at Film Comp Podcast or at Film Comp Pod on all major social media channels and filmmakerscompass.com. We have a feed of all of our previous content as well as links to all of our socials. So you can find us there as well. You could follow me at Big Kid D-Man and CP.
You can follow me at NDCal5. Thank you for hanging out and talking movies with us. And we will see you back here next week. Until then, keep watching movies.